Greetings everyone, welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Chaitanya and I am going to take up daily news analysis of certain important articles which have been picked up from the Hindu as well as Indian Express. The articles that we have chosen to present are as follows. The first article is State of the Economy Temper the Euphoria, which tries to explain the present macroeconomic scenario and how the euphoria in terms of economic growth rate might not be sustainable in the future. And also we'll try to bring the measures through which we could actually sustain long-term growth. It is from the Hindu, page number 6. Next one is Tamil Nadu government plans to reenact bill as Governor Ravi withholds assent. This is with respect to the continuous friction that we are witnessing between the governor as well as the state governments. The governments formed by the opposition political parties, which are the political parties that are different from the political party at the center, and their alliance is not close. What is happening is a rift in terms of politics and how governor functions, which is ultimately impacting the federal balance in this country. It is from the Hindu, page number 1. Next up is India targets $40 billion in technical textiles. That is, we are trying to tap in the global market as well as in the domestic market, creating the market as well as supply of the technical textiles, and we want to hit $40 billion production value of technical textiles. It is from the Hindu, page number 12. Next is COP28 in Dubai, what to expect from climate meeting. It is the oncoming climate discussions under the UNFCCC framework, which are to be held in December. We are going to see what to expect from this summit and why there is an issue in terms of reaching a final agreement between the developed as well as the developing countries. It is from the Indian Express, page number 15. The last is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework talks on clean economy conclude. Third IPEF talks have been concluded recently in San Francisco, United States. This is an initiative of the United States. As the name itself suggests, it wants to promote economic cooperation in fair and clean manner between the countries which are situated in Indo-Pacific region. It is from the Indian Express, page number 17. Let us start the analysis. Coming to the article, this article shows that the economic growth rates that we are presently witnessing in India might not be sustainable into the near future. Or maybe our growth rates are not high enough when compared to the potential that it could actually deliver. We will see the reasons behind the slower growth rates of India, or why our economic growth rates are not performing as per the expected lines. The title of the topic is The State of Economy Temper the Euphoria. That is, we need to temper our euphoria that our growth rates are high as of now. The relevance of the topic are, we are going to learn about the growth rate and trade deficit and all other factors which could make us understand the present macroeconomic situation of India and why our growth rate is not sustainable. And in mains topic, we'll learn about Indian economic growth and its prospects. So we could have an overall idea of how our economy is at the moment and where it needs to traverse sooner so that we could improve our potential. The context is the euphoria surrounding the increased projection of growth rates by International Monetary Fund report and other global organizations. IMF has stated that India could grow to the rate of 6.3% of GDP, whereas earlier it has projected that India will grow at the rate of 6.1%. So it has increased the projection of Indian growth rate in the year 2023-2024, that is this year. This amidst the economic turmoil that we are witnessing at the global level. The global growth rate is going to decline, at the same time even the China's growth rate is going to decline as per the projections. It could be seen here. IMF has projected that GDP growth rate of the world is going to go down, added to it China's growth rate by 0.3% to 4.2%. Thus, India remains a bright spot at the global level. But the problem is, many macroeconomic indicators and our investment rates, etc., show that this growth is unsustainable. So we need to have a long-term perspective where we could improve the possibility of India attaining higher growth rate levels. How could we say that the Indian growth rate levels are unsustainable? The real GDP growth rate in the pre-pandemic era itself is not as high as it was 2 years prior to the pre-pandemic era. That is, it has been seen that in the year 2016-17, the growth rate of India was 6.8% of GDP. But later on, we thought that maybe the pandemic is the reason of lower growth rates of Indian economy. But what we have witnessed is, in the 2019-20 itself, our growth rate was 2.8% of GDP. Added to it, the pandemic has actually made the situation more worse. And this has been referred to as Great Economic Slowdown by Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian. So this itself shows that there are certain structural issues that have hampered India's growth prospects, and we are yet to solve these structural issues. So one of the important structural issue here is our inability to tap the potential of manufacturing sector, call it as missing middle. If you look at the reports, the peak of the employment level that has been registered by formal manufacturing sector firms has been attained in the year 1984, which is below 3%. This is very low when compared to the extent of population that India has. And if you look at the peers of Indian economies, that is Southeast Asian economies, etc., the employment rate provided by the manufacturing sector is close to 25 to 30%. This is one of the reasons why we are not able to use our demographic dividend. We could have used our population to work these manufacturing firms and deliver higher economic growth rates. We are yet to attain the levels of 1984. This in itself shows the failure of Indian economy in terms of resolving the structural issues that are prevalent. Next is the globalization seems to have ended. Till now what happened is globalization was able to drive the growth of many economies. In fact, China is an example where it has excelled in terms of growth rate. Why? Because it was able to tap in the requirement of manufacturing sector firms in terms of its labor size or reducing the production costs, etc., where entire Western countries, most of them have shifted their base to China to manufacture because it is cheaper, it is efficient, and China has a potential as well as plans to use the economies of scale, etc. So this led to the continuity of higher growth rates in China, especially in manufacturing sector. It is a big player at the global level. Whereas India was not able to catch this bus quickly, and the structural issue that we have already seen where the peak employment level provided by it is low, itself is an indication that we didn't tap the potential. And the problem now is we are not able to tap now because the globalization seems to have ended its fire, which was till now providing higher growth rates to many economies like East Asian economies. The reasons for ending of the globalization's fire are many, and the economic survey of 2016-17 itself has shown that the future of globalization is in dilemma. We cannot rely on the global supply chains to actually improve our growth prospects. The value chains, which we call as value chains, where India could play a prominent role in manufacturing, where we could produce the goods and sell it to the global markets. The other issues are the industrial production has been said to have declined in the past, and our industrial production is still to catch up when compared to its potential. It could be seen from the stats here, where it has been seen that it has declined from 13.1% in the year 2015-16 to negative 3.5% in the year 2019-20. So, of course, pandemic is one of the important reasons, but we have already seen that in the pre-pandemic era itself, Indian economic growth rate hasn't been as per the expected lines. They have attained good growth rates in the year 2016-17. There are many reasons like demonetization, etc., etc. That is another debate. And one of the important reasons to worry is the fall in capital goods production. Capital goods production itself is an indication of expansion in economic activity. Why? Because the capital goods are bought by the firms to expand their production capabilities. We buy machinery, etc., to improve our production levels. The capital goods manufacturing decline itself is an indication that the manufacturing sector is not willing to increase its production. Maybe it is not as competitive as it wants to be. Or maybe we are not able to upgrade ourselves when compared to the manufacturers of the world. So this requires us to improve our capabilities. Thus, the structural issues are still prevalent in Indian economy. Then the decline in investment rate. We need to improve our investment rate, but what we are witnessing is a decline in it. Obviously, the ability to generate enough capital to be invested in Indian economy is still not high enough. We are still reliant on foreign direct investments. And our capital exchange market is still not a prominent player in terms of providing us the capital required. These issues are still lingering. So this investment rate need to be increased to actually sustain higher growth rates. The structural issue that we are talking about is the investment rate, which is calculated in terms of gross fixed capital formation to GDP, at current prices have declined from 34.3% to 28.9%. This is said to be the highest fall in post-independent India. Then the public capital expenditure. Experts have believed that the consumption is one of the reasons for the rise in economic growth rates in India, but the consumption expenditure survey has shown that it is not one of the important reasons. Then we thought that maybe it is due to public capital expenditure or public expenditure. We have witnessed a rise in growth rates. But what public capital expenditure shows us is that too is in decline. Though on papers it might be higher. One of the reasons why the public capital expenditure seems to be higher is merging of extra budgetary borrowing done by the central PSU with center's own budget. So obviously if central public sector undertakings do more borrowings from the market, this will come under the capital expenditure done by the government. So this shows as if we are increasing expenditure, that is government is increasing its expenses, that obviously creates demand in the market, and creation of demand itself is nothing but we are buying more goods, thus the possibility of increased growth rates. But that seems to be not founded on the factual lines. But that is not the case. We can see from this data, public investment seems to be around 6% of GDP. And this is low when compared to the pre-COVID-19 levels. So obviously, this is not driving the growth either. Then the net FDI inward flow has also declined. We have seen that FDI is one of the important source for the capital requirements of Indian industries, as well as the foreign investments into India, where the foreign firms are also operating. Because India still requires more and more capital to actually increase its production levels. Yes, one of the important ways we try to get the capital is from the foreign direct investment, or from the foreign countries. But these two are declining amidst the present global economic environment. This could be seen from the decline in FDI inward flows, that is GDP ratio, that is in terms of GDP ratio, they fell from 3.6% in 2018 to 2.4% in 2022. So this itself is an indication that the foreign investors are not in favor of increasing their investment commitments to India. At the same time, they are not considering India to have the potential to deliver the returns. So that is also a red flag. So we need to improve the Indian economy. So how to realize India's economic potential? One of the strategy provided by economic survey is we have to converge employment rate, that is we have to improve employment rate. That itself is an indication that we need to improve our production, because increasing production itself requires hiring more labor, though increasing production could also be due to increasing capital investments. But increasing production generally requires hiring more labor. Thus, we'll have more work to be done. Added to it, what we also need to do is we need to improve our productivity, that is labor productivity. This requires more capital investment, usage of technology, improving managerial skills, etc. And together, with the potential of this, we could actually improve the growth prospects of India, thus growth rates of the India could be improved. The present growth rates are not uh, an indication of healthy economic state. India could realize 10% of growth rate with ease if it is able to function as per the strong macroeconomic fundamentals that could attract more and more investment and realize our labor productivity and also hire more laborers. This requires coordination between private and government entities to increase the participation in India in economy. And many regulations need to be overhauled. We need to improve employment in India, etc., etc. So that we could realize our economic potential. Now let us look into another article. Coming to the article, it is on the relation between the governor and the state government. Presently, what we are witnessing is the rift between the state government and the governor. In this article, what we are going to see is why is there a rift? For that, we'll search the constitutional provisions which gave certain role to the governor and how this role is ultimately leading to the issues that arise on account of his role. The title of the article is Tamil Nadu government plans to reenact bill as Governor Ravi withholds assent. That is, the governor has withheld his assent. If he withholds his assent, the state government which tries to pass the bill through the state legislature will not be able to do it in law. That is, this law will be valid only if it gets the assent from the governor. We will see why these rifts are continuing again and again, especially in the states which are ruled by the opposition parties, which are in opposition to the party which is in power at the central level. That is, the different parties at the center as well as the state. The relevance of the topic is we'll be able to know the powers of the governor as well as the concept of federalism, because here we are ultimately dealing with the relationship between the central government and the state government due to the role of the governor. The syllabus, GS paper 2, separation of powers, etc. Coming to the context. The context is Governor Ravi withheld his assent. That is, the bill that has been passed by the state legislature is now void. Why? Because it has not got the assent from the governor. Now, we'll see the powers of the governor led to this situation. Under Article 200, governor could either give his assent to the bill, that is, approve the bill passed by the state legislature, or withhold his assent, that is, he doesn't give approval to the bill passed by the state legislature, or he could reserve the bill to the president for his assent. President has the following role. When the governor assigns the bill to the president, that is, refers the bill to the president, the role of the president under Article 201 is as follows. He either gives assent or withholds his assent. That is, either he approves it or he doesn't approve it. Or he may ask the governor to return the bill for reconsideration of the house. That is, ultimately giving back it to the house from where it has been initiated for its reconsideration. What will happen if this is the case? It will have the following effects on the bill. Delay in receiving of the benefits, why? Because state government tries to extend certain benefits to its people or make certain changes of the functioning of the government, etc., etc. But it will not be able to do, why? Because it is not approved by the governor. And disruption of the government processes. By certain times, as I said, the measures taken by the government through the state legislature are passed by the state legislature so as to transform certain activities, or transform certain rules to see that the operations of the state government are done in an efficient manner. If governor doesn't give his approval, it will be difficult for them. For example, they want to see that the administration of the school is done in an efficient manner. For that, they might bring in new elements like the human resource upgradation, like infrastructural requirements of the schools, etc., etc. If it is not passed by the governor, then it doesn't become an act, and it will not be, that is, the state government will not be able to execute those laws. Then the public trust will be eroded. The public elect its representatives with the hope that they will represent their interest in terms of taking decisions in the legislature. But here, despite taking decisions in the legislature, they are not able to get them passed. Why? Because ultimately the power has been vested in the hands of governor. This will lead to erosion of the trust. Public will not be able to trust the representatives. Why? Because they are not able to get the decisions. Next is constitutional crisis. The government at the state level will function efficiently only when they are in a cooperative relationship with the governor. If there is rift, they will not be able to pass bills. They will not be able to make certain changes in administration or bring in new legislations, etc. And this will lead to hampering of the functioning of the state government, thus creating a constitutional crisis. Next is, it will undermine the concept of federalism. Why? Because ultimately governor is appointed by center, and thus what it will go down is a rift between center and states. The state government, which is also ruled by political party, will feel that the central government is not willing to let it function on its own and meddling in its affairs, thus creating a rift between center and states. Thus the cooperation that is required for the effective functioning of this country will take a hit, ultimately impacting the federalism. Now, what are the issues? Why are these issues raging again and again? The thing is that governor is not acting as an unbiased agent. Instead, he is acting as a political agent of the center, because he is appointed by the center, and center is nothing but formed by political party at the central level, and the directives of the central government is being followed diligently rather than using the consciousness or the constitution as the guide. Governor is acting as per the wishes of the central government. Then is the misuse of state emergency power. Again and again what we have witnessed is, somehow the governor's report shows that there is a constitutional crisis, and this ultimately leads to imposition of state emergency. This despite the fact that the emergency kind of situation doesn't exist. It is simply to dismiss the state government. And this has been seen in the past, right from the Kerala incident, where Jawaharlal Nehru has dismissed the state government. The latest case was Arunachal Pradesh, where the judiciary had to intervene to revoke the decision taken by the center. This ultimately leads to lack of trust between the center and states. Next, appointment of vice chancellors is also another issue. State governments want to change this power which has been vested in the governor. This is one of the controversies that is surrounding between the Tamil Nadu governor and the Tamil Nadu government. The reasons for the issues. What are the reasons? The constitutional provisions which are ultimately leading to the rift between the center and the states. There is no fixed tenure of the governor. What we are witnessing again and again is, once there is a change in the prime minister at the center, who is from a different political party, they simply dismiss the existing governors. Why? Because ultimately they want to control the governor post that gives them control over the state governments. This shouldn't be the way, but this is how our present political parties are functioning. Next is the mode of appointment. Why? Because they are directly appointed by the center, rather than having a constitutional process like people electing the governor. Next is discretionary powers that have been vested in the governor. Governor has a discretion whether to give assent to the bill or not give assent to the bill. Similarly, has many constitutional as well as situational discretions. Next is the loopholes in the constitution, which give discretion to the governor. At the same time, constitution doesn't specify the cases where governor is supposed to use his discretion. So it doesn't specify the extent of power that governor possesses. Next is there is no impeachment process. That is, removal of governor has no impeachment process. Center could simply remove the governor, and state has no role in terms of removing the governor from his power. Now let us look into judicial pronouncement, which actually give insight into the role of the governor, how the role of the governor should be. The first is Shamsher Singh and ANR versus State of Punjab 1974. In this case, Supreme Court has clearly stated that the governor as well as president's role is dependent upon the advice of their ministers. That is, they have to act as per the wishes of the executive, that is the ministers, rather than using their discretion and giving or withholding the assent to the bill that has been passed by the legislatures at the center as well as the state. But one interesting perspective is given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's perspective, that despite governor not having any role in terms of the decisions taken at the state level, yet he has certain duties, and these duties is what the state government should keep it in mind. The state government should work as per the provisions of the constitution, as well as see that the functioning of the state government will not lead to any rift between the central and state governments. But this sort of interpretation holds true only if governor is acting in an unbiased manner and using constitution as spirits. Only if constitutional spirit is followed. But that spirit is missing as of now due to the political activities of the governor on account of the influence of the central government. Now, what is the way forward? We need to encourage dialogue and cooperation between the central as well as state levels, between different political parties, so that a consensual environment could be established and everyone works in cooperation in terms of seeing that the entire country is moving forward. Next, Rajmannar Committee recommendation holds true here, where it stated that governor of the state should not consider himself as an agent of the center. Rather, he has to operate as per the constitutional spirit. Next is, we have to establish clear deadlines for the bills to be passed by the governor. Because presently the constitution doesn't state the time period within which governor is supposed to act on the decisions taken by the state government or the legislature of the state. These are some of the recommendations that the governor role should be reformed with. Coming to the next article, it is on technical textiles. India has been experiencing rapid progress in the production of technical textiles. In this article, we are going to see what the technical textiles are and why it is considered one of the important industries for generating growth in India. The title of the article is India Targets 40 Billion in Technical Textiles. The relevance of the topic, we are going to learn about technical textiles and National Technical Textile, UPSC syllabus, prelims, advancement in science and technology, as well as for economy. The context is the target of touching $40 billion by 2030 from the current levels of $23 billion in terms of value. Now let us look into what are technical textiles. Technical textiles, as the name itself suggests, it is dependent upon the functional fabrics. That is, it has certain applications. To pursue certain applications, we create a fabric which has certain qualities, and these qualities are essential for attainment of those functions. For example, certain textiles have resistance to fire. Certain textiles are required to venture into the deeper parts of the ocean. So in this way, there are wide-ranging technical textile applications, providing us immense opportunities. The demand of the technical textiles is rising at the global level as well. Given India Being one of the important textile manufacturers in the world, technical textile provides it an ample scope to tap this potential. Now, as I said already, technical textiles variance depends upon the application part, that is, the applications of those fabric technologies. Thus, it is a bit technical and it is dependent upon various functions. For example, to withstand extreme temperatures or chemicals or extreme environmental conditions, etc. etc. Thus, it provides functionalities like conductivity, durability, flexibility, or flame resistance, etc. To be able to adapt to this environment, we require the assistance of these textiles. Depending upon the type of applications that the technical textiles serve, we have totally 12 types of technical textiles. These are agrotech, build-tech, cloth-tech, geotech, etc. The measures to actually promote technical textiles are Technology Mission on Technical Textiles. This is launched by Ministry of Textiles, and the way it wants to attain the mission of increasing the production of technical textiles is to create awareness, to facilitate research and development, because as the name itself suggests, it is all dependent upon the technological development, and at the same time to promote the usage of technical textiles in India, that is creating a market for these products in India. National Technical Textiles Mission, and this is like a supplement to the existing Technical Textile Mission, which is launched by Ministry of Textiles, and it was launched for 4 years to pursue its goal from financial year 2020-2021 to 2023-2024. How it wants to attain is to improve the following: the component 1, research, innovation and development; component 2, promotion and market development; component 3, tap the export market through exports; component 4, education, training and skill development. So this is about the technical textiles. Now let us look into another article. Coming to the next article, it is on COP28, that is Conference of Party 28. And Conference of Party are held within the framework of UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. We are going to witness this conference in the December of this month, where crucial decisions on fighting climate change will be made. Let us look into the possible outcomes that we may expect from this conference. The title of the article is COP28 in Dubai and what to expect from it. The relevance, we are going to learn about COP28 and United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. Syllabus, GS Paper 3, Environment. Now, the context. Context is nothing but the conference that will be held on December 12th in Dubai, UAE. Let us look into COP and UNFCCC. UNFCCC, that is a Convention on Climate Change, was initially adopted in 1992 at Summit. So, this is where the countries have come together and have agreed to UNFCCC, which has come alive in the year 1995 when the countries have ratified it. Now, close to 197 countries have ratified it. The support structure is, it has a secretariat at Bonn, Germany. Secretariat is nothing but the organization which executes the decisions taken by Conference of Party under the framework of UNFCCC. Then the objective, as I said, it is to fight climate change. How to fight climate change? It is by reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases, as you know, increase the temperature in the atmosphere. The way they behave with the sun rays will lead to rise in temperatures. They spread the radiations that emerge out of the light that is radiated back by the earth, and these gases, as you know, spread the heat in the atmosphere, increasing the temperatures, which has possible disastrous consequences on account of rising temperatures. This climate change is to be mitigated. For that, we need to reduce the extent of greenhouse gas content in the atmosphere. The major outcomes that we have witnessed till now are the Kyoto Protocol. The next is the ambitious Paris Agreement. These two are important agreements of the countries. Now let us look into the Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties is the major decision-making body. So the decisions taken under the convention are done by Conference of Parties, and Conference of Parties conducted annually during the month of December. So it is the decision-making body. Next is the inaugural COP meet, as I already explained you, was done in the year 1995, where the actual convention was brought into action, though it was initiated in the year 1992. You have to remember the difference. Next is the rotating presidencies from among the members who have ratified this convention. The president's election is done annually in the inaugural session, at the beginning of session. The last two Conference of Parties, you have to remember the facts. One is in Glasgow, COP26, in the year 2021. The other is Sharm el-Sheikh, which is the latest one, which has been conducted in the year 2022, which is in Egypt. Now let us look into the expectations from the present COP28. The first one is tripling renewable energy by 2030. One of the major ways to attain the goal of climate change, to attain the goal of reducing the global emissions, is by producing electricity through renewable sources. That is, for example, solar power, wind power, etc., rather than using fossil fuels like diesel or coal, etc. So the major goal would be, or one of the expectation is, to increase the production of electricity through renewable sources by 70% by the year 2030. At the moment, 28% of the power or energy is generated through the renewable sources. It is very less. Still, our dependence upon the non-renewable sources is higher. Generally, the non-renewable sources are associated with the emissions, that is, greenhouse gas emissions. The impact is, it could reduce 7 billion tons of emissions of CO2 by 2030 if this goal is to be attained. Next is the climate finance. Again and again, the countries are raising the demand of $100 billion climate fund annually, which is to be contributed by the developed countries. We are yet to see that materialize, but one of the important outcome expected from this conference this year is the $100 billion fund. The global stock take, as the name itself suggests, we are going to stock take the emissions that are emitted by the countries and the measures that will ultimately lead to reduction of these emissions. Because under UNFCCC, all the countries have pledged that they are going to reduce the emissions. Pledging itself is insufficient without the delivery. We could know about the delivery only if we assess the extent of reduction in emissions. That is a global stock take. It tries to measure whether the countries who have pledged that they are going to reduce the emissions are doing in reality or not. Next up is the loss and damage fund. As the name itself suggests, the countries are trying to get a fund, especially the countries who are actually experiencing the losses on account of the changes in climate. That is a loss and damage fund to compensate for the losses that they are incurring due to the disasters which are on account of the climate change. Climate change, as you know, is one of the leading causes for the intensification of the disastrous events, the weather-related disasters. So loss and damage fund could actually compensate for the losses to some extent at least. Next is the phasing down of fossil fuel. This could be associated or linked to the tripling of renewable energy. So this could be done by phasing down or phase out of fossil fuels, particularly the coal. The challenges are the deep divisions still persist. The deep divisions with respect to the common but differentiated responsibility, at the same time the equity, etc., where the developed countries are not taking up the responsibility, despite the historical emissions of them being higher when compared to the developing countries. whereas developing countries require carbon space for their emissions because their development levels is not high enough for them to commit to reduction of the emissions. So these divisions still persist, where the developed countries are not willing to assist to the extent they are expected to, either in terms of contribution of the funds or the transfer of technology to enable the developing countries to actually adapt to the changes of climate or reduce the emissions through the technologies that they get from the developed countries. Let's look what is going to happen in the near future. Conclusion. The conclusion is nothing but it is an important opportunity to get to meet each other and conduct a session next month and take tough decisions so as to act on the climate change seriously. The present decisions taken are not enough to actually reduce or mitigate the climate related emissions or reducing the impact of the climate change through adaptation. What we require is tough measures. Coming to the article, it is on Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. It is one of the important ways through which we want to counter the rising Chinese influence. China, as you know, is trying to build a project called Belt and Road Initiative, through which it wants to enhance its infrastructural presence in other countries, at the same time create a route through which it could not only manufacture goods, but also sell these goods to other countries. Many countries have already joined the bus because they are going to get certain incentives from China in terms of loans, building infrastructure projects, investments, etc., etc. But certain countries are trying to counter this influence. One such measure is the United States Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. As the name itself suggests, it wants to build a framework for economic development. It has many elements within it, where India too is a party to it. In this article, we are going to look into what this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is all about. The title of the article is IPEF Talks on Economy Conclude. As the name itself suggests, it is on clean economy. Clean economy, nothing but to pursue economic development in a clean manner. It could be done by reducing the emissions or see that the emissions that are reduced or the emissions of the industries could be emitted into the environment while taking into the issues of the quality of emissions as well. Next, the relevance of the topic is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, especially relevant for prelims. The context is the recently concluded third Indo-Pacific Economic Framework session that has been held in the United States. It is the initiative of the United States of America, and it is on 14 November 2023. The third session has been hosted, and there were certain key agreements made in fair and clean economy related matters. One of the important pillars under the framework that we are going to see as we go along. The agreement under IPEF relate to clean and fair economy practices. As the name itself suggests, fair economy is nothing but trying to build a relationship between the countries so that the economic engagement is fair. You know, the problem with economic engagement at the international level are one or the other countries try to utilize its dominant position so as to increase the chances of advantageous positions experienced by that country, like the China. China has enormous economic might, and through it, it could actually try to influence other countries so as to incentivize, so as to get more benefits from it, rather than trying to see that the partnership is reciprocal to one another. So through this measure, US wanted to expand its influence economically. The agreements are Clean Energy Agreement, where it wants to initiate a private investment among the countries, that is the member countries who are part of the framework, and for it, it has a plan of $30 million catalytic capital fund, which will invest in the projects related to clean energy. At the same time, under Fair Economy Agreement, it wants to initiate agreements among the countries so that the corrupt practices used generally between the countries to see that the trade measures are in so and so fashion, etc., could be reduced. Many times what happens is between the countries, the agreements are generally concluded, not generally concluded, there are chances of agreements being concluded due to corruption. Especially China has been accused to influence other countries and letting them into agreements which are detrimental to the countries which have agreed with the China through corrupt practices, by bribing the officials or by bribing the representatives of those countries. This ultimately impacts the quality of relationship between China and other countries. The other countries who have signed the agreement witness their debt levels to rise, and ultimately they become dependent on China. So in this way, what US wants to see is that the economic engagement between the countries is fairer. For that, it wants to see that there will be a strengthening of anti-corruption as well as tax-related measures where the taxation should be fairer. The taxation is also an important issue at the global level, because many times what happens is certain countries try to reduce the taxation that they impose upon the money that flows into their, and that will create the influence among the investors or the individuals who are in position of wealth to transact businesses such that their base is in the country which imposes lesser taxes. So fair taxation is also an important aspect at the global level. Next is, what is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework? As the name itself suggests, it is an initiative by the United States to pursue economic engagement with the countries of the region of Indo-Pacific, that is, the countries that lie within Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. So it is led by United States of America, and it is not a regular trade pact like that we usually see, that is free trade agreement or a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. It is like an agreement which is not obligated. That is, countries who enter into it are not obligated to execute it, like we see in the case of Asia Free Trade Agreement. There are 4 pillars under the agreement. Pillar 1 corresponds to trade, Pillar 2 corresponds to supply chain, Pillar 3 corresponds to clean economy, Pillar 4 the fair economy. Presently, there are 14 countries who are part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. They are Australia, Brunei, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, and the US. Now let us look into the Indian perspective of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. India is also a part of it, as we already seen in the past slide. India is in favor of this framework, barring Pillar 1, where it has certain concerns. We are going to see the concerns that India has, where it led to lesser engagement of India. It is as follows. It will serve the American industry. That is what India expressed. That is why India has expressed its concern with respect to Pillar 1. Given the business might of America and the sophistication of American businesses, it might actually impact the ability of our domestic enterprises to compete with these countries. Then we have the issue called data localization, where American firms are accused or have the technical know-how to utilize the data more efficiently when compared to Indian industries. The data localization is also important. Why? Because of the country's importance attached to it to maintain sovereignty. It wants to see that the data of the citizens should be used by the country rather than by other countries, especially in profiling the individuals or understanding the psyche of other countries. So it is a sensitive issue which we are still dealing with, and this issue needs resolution. Then only India might think of the concerns or addressing the concerns of data localization and other data related measures. Next, the labor and environmental standards that are proposed under this agreement is also a sign of worry for India. Why? Because we have our own labor relations, legislations which are different from other countries. And the legislation is dependent upon the socio-economic development of India rather than how economically well developed the other countries are. We require certain trimming down of excessive regulations under labor laws, because we want to pursue manufacturing activities. And if they are stringent, the cost of production is going to rise. So it is context specific. It depends upon the countries rather than other countries dictating the term. The other is environmental standards. We are not developed enough to agree to high environmental standards. We need carbon space for emissions. Carbon space is Must, because the present economic development requires emissions. Now let us practice certain prelims questions on the articles that have already been presented and analyzed. Okay, the first question is on Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. We already seen the countries that are participating in Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. The trick to remember the members of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is the countries should be situated in Indo-Pacific region, obviously. And the other thing is that the countries which have close association with the United States, as the initiative is that of United States. So now let us look at the answer. If you look into the options, the obvious choice will be South Korea, Singapore, Japan, Indonesia. All these countries have good relations with the United States. You look at the Japan, Singapore and South Korea, especially Japan, Singapore, South Korea have close association with the United States. So you could use this knowledge to solve this question. Answer is D. Which of the following is an application of aramid fibers? It is one of the technical textile. And the answer is obviously it is related to facts. It is heat resistant fabric used in aerospace and military application. Certain times UPSC also asks questions on facts. It is not that we have to remember every fact, but it is just to show caution that certain times facts are also important. Next is, consider the following statements about the Conference of Party of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As you know, the sessions and the outcomes of the sessions of the COP are important for preliminary examination purposes. We are going to read certain statements and look into the possible answer. COP is the apex decision-making authority of the UNFCCC. We have already seen this to be true. The inaugural COP meeting was held in Berlin, Germany in March 1995. This is true. Though we have seen that it is in 1992, in Earth Summit, countries have decided to start UNFCCC, but it has materialized only in the year 1995. So this is true. The next is, the presidency of COP rotates among the 5 United Nations regional groups. This too is true. It is not the countries that we are talking about. Don't get confused here. It is the regional groups. These regional groups cover almost the entire globe. So the answer is, all the 3 are correct. Let's see a question related to economy. Consider the following statement. Due to near financial crisis in 2013-14 is referred to as great economic slowdown in Indian economy. This is false. As we have seen, pandemic has actually hit the economic growth capabilities of almost all the countries, but Indian economy has witnessed slowdown in the pre-pandemic era as well. Many say that the reasons behind it is due to the demonetization. Next is the great economic slowdown that we are talking here is about the economic slowdown that we have witnessed in the pre-pandemic era itself. That is the years prior to the pandemic hit economy. The pattern of highest decline in the gross fixed capital formation as component of GDP at current prices in the post-independent history of India was experienced in the post-COVID recovery period. So the article that have been shown and the analysis that have been done has shown that our gross fixed capital formation is actually declining. So this option is true. First one is false. This one is true. Next is, the extra budgetary borrowings by the central public sector undertakings in India have been merged into budgetary outlays. This is true. And this is one of the reasons why we are witnessing the rise in public fund of late. As both 2 and 3 are true, the answer is C, 2 and 3. So the answer is C. Next, let us look into a mains question. Governor-state relations in India have been a subject of constant debate and scrutiny. Right? We have seen the rifts that are occurring, especially in the southern states. Analyze the constitutional provisions defining the role of the governor and critically examine instances where governor discretion has led to tensions between state executive and the office of the governor. We have already seen that the discretion vested in governor as per the constitutional provisions is one of the reasons for the debate that is raging between the state government and the central government, as well as the role played by the governor. In the introduction, mentioned we have already seen how B.R. Ambedkar has outlined the role that is expected from the governor. Is like a conscience keeper of the constitution, so that the state governments run as per the provisions of the constitution in spirit as well as in letter, and also explain some recent issues. We've seen the rifts that are occurring in Telangana, in Tamil Nadu, and also bring in the component of lieutenant governor while dealing with Delhi. This will add more dimensions. Then write the body, the constitutional provisions. You could mention 200 and 201, where it will clearly state how the discretion has been vested in the hands of governor as well as president. Then also mention where the governor discretion could actually be used, and mention the constitutional as well as situational discretion of the governor. Then try to elaborate it by showing how it has been misused, why it has been misused, and how to actually reduce the misuse by clearly defining the rule, by bringing some amendments into the constitution, by codifying the discretionary powers of the governor, etc., to reduce the rift and promote federal balance in the country. In the conclusion, write down certain committee recommendations and try to mention how, by including state government in appointing governor, we could reduce the rifts through promotion of cooperation. This completes today's daily news analysis. Please like, share and subscribe our channel. Thank you everyone.